Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something hot. Not metaphorically hot, no. I mean, boiling your eyeballs, scalding your skin hot. You've just walked into a 17th century Russian bathhouse, and it is not a spa day. The wooden door creaks behind you as thick, wet air wraps around your face like a wool blanket soaked in sweat. The room is packed, men and women alike, half naked or fully, red-faced, steam-drenched and wielding leafy branches like they're auditioning for some kind of forest-themed martial arts tournament. You're hit with a wall of heat so dense your vision blurs and your lungs flinch. And it smells. Not entirely bad, but not quite good. A mix of birch leaves, human musk, wet ash, and that faint metallic tinge of too much body heat in too small a space. You shuffle forward on slick, mossy planks, trying not to slip, trying not to make eye contact, trying not to look too foreign. You're not here for luxury. You're here because this is where Russians go to cleanse, cure, socialize, argue, flirt, get spiritually reborn, and sometimes just survive. But let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and before we go further, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to see just how far this steam spreads. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the threshold of a banya, Russia's answer to the bathhouse, and a centerpiece of 17th century life that's as spiritual as it is scalding. The building is deceptively simple. From the outside, low wooden walls, a thick turf roof, and a squat chimney puffing out smoke like it's sending signals to God. Inside, it's a sauna on steroids. The moment you step in, you're hit with a rush of steam so thick it coats your eyeballs. Seriously, you blink, and your lashes stick together like overcooked noodles. Someone hands you a bundle of leaves and says nothing, just a nod. The leaves smell leafy. You clutch them like a security blanket. The air hums with grunts and breathy gasps. People are sitting, lying, squatting, and flopping around on different levels of wooden benches that climb up the walls like steamy bleachers. The higher the bench, the hotter the air. You wisely pick the bottom rung, rookie move, but you're only shot at survival. Your skin prickles almost immediately, heat seeping into your bones. You're sweating in places you didn't know had sweat glands. The wood beneath you is warm pleasant at first, then suspiciously slick. Someone nearby pours water over a pile of sizzling stones, and the air becomes liquid fire. Steam whooshes over you with a hiss, curling into your ears, your nostrils, your pores. Fun fact. In the 1600s, Russian peasants and nobles alike visited the banya weekly, often on Fridays. It wasn't just for hygiene, it was practically a spiritual rite. Think of it as church meets gym, meets group therapy. Historians agree that the bathhouse was one of the few egalitarian zones of Russian life. Here the serf could sweat beside the boyar, and sometimes they even shared leeches. But here's the quirky part, bathhouses were believed to be alive. Not metaphorically, literally. The Bannik, a mischievous bathhouse spirit, was said to dwell in the steam room. If you misbehaved, used foul language, entered without knocking, or sat on the wrong bench, the Bannik might scold you or scratch your back open. Not exactly the hospitality industry's finest. And yet, you keep going, because it's expected. This is what people do. The banya is life. You catch movement out of the corner of your eye. A large man built like a barrel of vodka walks past with slow confidence, his body glistening like a roast pig. He gestures for someone to follow and pours an entire bucket of icy water over his head like it's nothing. He doesn't flinch. You, however, just got second-hand frostbite. A naked toddler zooms past you, shrieking with glee. He's chasing a chicken. Why is there a chicken in the bathhouse? No one seems surprised. You try to sit still, but your butt is slowly cooking. You shift. Bad idea. Now you've slid an inch into someone else's puddle. One old woman sits calmly in the corner, eyes closed, smiling as steam curls around her like a ghost. She's probably been doing this since Ivan the Terrible was a teething toddler. At this point, your brain begins to shut off non-essential functions. Words blur, thoughts melt. You're not sure if you're sweating or just becoming steam. Here's a legit medical opinion. From the era the Russian bathhouse was believed to purge bad humors and prevent plague. And honestly, they may have been onto something. Regular steam exposure likely helped with respiratory issues, and the intense sweating acted as a rudimentary detox. Some historians still argue whether this ritualistic cleanliness played a role in Russia surviving certain disease outbreaks better than Western Europe. Of course, others say it was sheer dumb luck and vodka. As you slouch lower, trying to pretend your brain isn't screaming, a middle-aged woman with a fierce expression points at you and barks a word. Before you can react, she slaps you not with her hand, but with a wet bundle of birch twigs. This is not an attack. It's your introduction. She's massaging you with a venik, a traditional tool made of soaked birch or oak branches. She's doing it wrong, you're pretty sure. Or maybe that's just how it feels when your back is used like a xylophone. The slapping actually increases circulation. It's supposed to open your pores and your spirit. Or maybe your patience. She's smiling now. You are not. You take a deep breath. Mistake. Your lungs fill with hot vapor and regret. Somewhere nearby, someone starts singing. The sound is haunting, warbling through the fog, echoing off the wood like a lullaby for the overheated. You can barely see the ceiling, or your knees, or anything that isn't vibrating with moist heat. And yet, there's a weird peace settling in. Your heart rate slows, your muscles uncoil, your thoughts drift, you're sweating like a roasted beet, but somehow, that's okay. In this haze, you start to understand. The bathhouse isn't just a place to wash, it's where Russians endure heat like they endure winter, autocrats and long novels with silence, stubbornness, and a weird sort of pride. Your skin is beet red, your head is light. You're still clutching that leafy bundle like it's a weapon or a friend. The old woman in the corner opens one eye and gives you a nod. You nod back. Somehow, you made it through your first steam. Barely. You think it's over. You survived the first round of Russian heat apocalypse. You endured the scalding air, the birch twig assault, and that unnerving toddler chicken chase combo. But no, this is just intermission. Because now, the real test begins. A man with a towel slung over one shoulder, not worn, just held like a prop, steps up, makes eye contact, and gestures toward a small wooden bench near the doorway. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His expression says everything. Time to strip, comrade. You're already mostly unclothed, but in the 17th century Russian bathhouse, there's a difference between underdressed and completely unapologetically naked. Guess which one you're about to be. You glance around nervously. There are no private stalls, no towels, no shame. Everyone around you is nude, casually, comfortably, like this is normal. Because it is. Modesty is a Western invention. Here, You're just a human body, wet, red, and steaming. So, you take a deep breath, peel off the last layer of fabric, and awkwardly shuffle toward the corner where others have tossed their clothes in a damp heap. No hooks, no cubbies, just wood and trust. And now you stand there, exposed, goose-pimpled, slightly trembling. Not from cold, but from the overwhelming sense of being observed by strangers while your entire butt is visible. You're trying not to make eye contact with anyone, especially not the older man casually pouring kvass-fermented bread drink over his chest like it's bath oil. He looks like a monk who bench presses hay bales for fun. A woman nearby hums softly while braiding her own hair. She's missing 2 fingers, possibly from a farming accident or a wolf. She nods at you, then goes back to humming. Apparently you passed some unspoken test just by disrobing. In the 17th century, undressing in public wasn't seen as inherently shameful in Russian bathhouses. In fact, it was part of the ritual. You weren't just removing clothes, you were shedding sin, sickness, and social status. Everyone looked equally ridiculous, and maybe that was the point. Still, you're not entirely convinced. One peculiar thing in some villages, bathhouse visits were coordinated so family members wouldn't overlap. Other times, especially during festivals or preparation for weddings, it was a communal free-for-all. Men, women, children, the elderly, everyone steamed together. Historians still argue whether the mixed-gender practice was widespread or more localized to peasant communities, but there's no denying the banya was intimate, not sexual, not per se, but deeply, uncomfortably intimate by modern standards. You've now fully embraced the role of the newbie, awkward, twitchy, and probably standing in someone else's puddle. Again. Someone tosses a bundle of clothing into the corner and strides confidently past you. He's tall, bold, and dripping with the smug serenity of someone who's been doing this since before your country existed. He smells faintly of rye and charcoal. He grunts, gestures to your feet, then hands you a pair of wooden clogs. You take them with gratitude and immediately regret it. They're splintery, heavy, and slightly warped from years of exposure, but barefoot on these slick floors, you'll take the risk of a wooden blister. You clop your way toward the next room, where steam still lingers but the air is clearer, more breathable. This is the predbanik, the cooling room, a space for resting, drinking, and judgmental staring. People lounge here between sessions, sipping herbal teas or kvass, munching on dried fish and discussing everything from crop failures to who in the village might be a witch. You catch snippets of talk. She milked her cow backwards, demon, for sure. The Tsar's tax collector has boils on his neck, bad omen. Your turn to scrub my back, Mikhail. You sit on the edge of a bench, posture stiff, hoping no one asks you to scrub anything. You're too busy trying not to stick to the wood like a cheese slice on a car dashboard. One woman sits cross-legged in the corner, spreading a homemade honey mixture onto her skin. She offers you some with a look that says, "You look like you need help." You nod politely. The honey smells amazing, but feels like trying to spread glue onto a wet balloon. You're instantly sticky and regretful. But hey, at least your skin will be glowing, right? In some villages, people believed that covering oneself in honey, mud, or crushed herbs helped draw out illness. Folk medicine and superstition lived side by side with real, practical hygiene. Even today, Russian spas still offer honey wraps, proving that some ancient wellness trends were way ahead of their time, or at least trend resistant. A boy, maybe 12, wanders in, holding a wooden ladle the size of a salad bowl. He splashes water onto the stones in the adjacent room. Steam whooshes in through the doorway like a summoned spirit. Everyone sighs. A few people mutter thanks, not to the boy, but to the stones themselves. Because here's another weird detail: the stones are sacred. They're the heart of the banya, heated for hours in advance, often with birch logs, and carefully guarded. People believed that insulting or disrespecting the stones could anger the Bannock, the spirit of the bathhouse. That's why some bathers whispered apologies if they accidentally dropped water too quickly or spilled something impure. You hear the crackling pop of fresh steam, and once again, the group begins migrating back toward the Perilka, the hot room. A few first-timers, like you, hesitate, but the veterans, they charge in. Some grin. One woman cracks her knuckles. You think she used to be a soldier. You steel yourself and follow. The heat hits harder this time. Somehow it's more. Like the first time was just an appetizer, and now the banya is showing its full fury. The birch branches return, this time wielded by a trio of women who work in unison, slapping down on backs, shoulders, thighs, like synchronized swimmers, but with more thwacking. One man actually moans in delight. You're starting to suspect he's not human. Someone dumps more water onto the stones. You hear a hiss so violent, it sounds like a dragon sneeze. Then, silence. Except, not quite. Because under the crackle of the fire, under the drip of condensation, under the shuffles and sighs, you hear something else. A whisper. It's faint, unclear, like wind across dry leaves. You look around, but no one else reacts. Your heart rate climbs. Is it the Bannock? Just the steam playing tricks? Or have you been here too long? You close your eyes, take slow, careful breaths, and let the sweat pour freely. Your entire body is liquefying, but there's a strange calm underneath it all. Like you've passed some threshold. Pain has become peace. Exposure has become acceptance. The birch bundles don't sting as much. The heat doesn't smother. You've stopped fighting. You've started bathing. You're still wildly uncomfortable, but you're here. One old man, eyes shut, whispers a short prayer. He looks more monk than bather. He repeats it again and again. It's a prayer to Saint Pantaleimon, patron of healing, common among villagers. Strange how the spiritual mixes so seamlessly with the sweaty in this place. He opens one eye and smiles at you. Then, without warning, he flings a full ladle of icy water over his own head and laughs. Of course he does. Now that you've been parboiled, honey-glazed, whipped with sticks, and casually baptized by an elderly stranger, you might assume the bathhouse has thrown everything it has at you. It hasn't. You're gently okay, not so gently herded with the others toward a narrow wooden door at the far end of the Pred Bannock. You don't know where it leads, but everyone seems to be moving with the grim resolve of people who know what's coming and have simply made peace with it. You, on the other hand, are blissfully ignorant until the door opens and a blast of cold air slaps you so hard it practically knocks your soul loose. Outside, the air is sharp, clean, and utterly unforgiving. It's either early winter or late spring, frankly. You've lost all concept of time. Your skin, still flushed and steaming, is now assaulted by wind and snowflakes the size of breadcrumbs. Your body screams. Your feet crunch into packed snow. And your only thought is, why did I do this? And then someone shoves you, not hard, but firmly, purposefully, right toward a hole in the ice. Oh yes, there's a frozen pond just beyond the bathhouse, and someone, probably the same lunatic who drinks kvass like bath oil, has chopped a neat, coffin-shaped opening in the ice. Because what better way to end a scalding ritual than with sudden hypothermia? You hesitate. Everyone notices. A teenage girl who looks like she eats boiled nails for breakfast rolls her eyes, mutters something about weak knees, and plunges in head first. She surfaces a second later, gasping and grinning like she's just rubbed the Tsar. You no longer have an excuse, so you step closer. The ground is slippery. Your feet are numb. The ice around the edges is melting slightly from all the previous jumpers, creating a slick ring of betrayal. You take one breath, then another, and in you go. The cold hits your skin like glass shattering. Your lungs seize. Your vision tunnels. For a split second, you're convinced your heart has stopped. You've turned into an icicle with regrets, and then you're up, outside, heaving. Steam pours off your body into the frozen air like smoke from a burnt offering. People cheer. Someone throws a towel at your head. You can't feel your feet, but you feel alive. This plunge, known as a morja, wasn't just for thrills. Cold water immersion was believed to seal in the health benefits of the banya, to shock the humors into balance, and to build spiritual resilience. It's still done today, especially on Orthodox Epiphany, when entire families cut holes in rivers and plunge in cross-shaped formations. Historians still argue whether this tradition originated with pagan purification rites or later Christian symbolism, but either way it's become a cornerstone of Russian hardiness. You shiver, you tremble, you stand barefoot in the snow with steam rising from your scalp like you're auditioning to be a haunted kettle. Then someone offers you a pickle. Yes, a pickle. You're back inside the predbanik, wrapped in a burlap towel, scratchy but better than air, and a man with half a beard hands you a small wooden bowl. Inside pickles, rye bread, and a tiny glass of clear liquid that you know isn't water. You stare. He gestures, eat. So you do. The pickle is salty, sour, and strangely satisfying. The bread is dense enough to qualify as a building material. And the drink? It burns. You blink. He smiles. Horseradish vodka, someone says behind you, warms the bones. You're not sure if it's helping your bones or melting your insides, but at least your face is returning to its natural color. Across the room, a group of old women are singing low, haunting harmonies that rise and fall like wind across a graveyard. It's a folk song, you think, though the words are foreign and slightly off-key. One of them keeps time with a wooden spoon tapping the bench. The heat from the banya seeps back into your limbs. You're starting to feel whole again. A woman gestures for you to sit beside her. She's holding a wooden comb and carefully brushing someone's hair. She offers to do yours. You decline, but politely. She tells you this is how brides were once prepared, cleaned, steamed, combed, and sung over before their wedding night. The banya was sacred for these rituals, not just physical but spiritual cleansing. The whole village might attend, bringing songs, gifts, and gossip. Another quirky detail. In some regions, women gave birth in the banya. It was warm, private, and already filled with healing herbs and birthing superstitions. Midwives were often the local bathhouse experts. Makes sense, doesn't it? One moment you're relaxing with birch twigs, the next you're delivering a baby while someone chants a prayer over hot rocks. That's just how multitasking worked in 17th century Russia. Someone stirs a pot of herbs on the stove, thyme, chamomile, wormwood. The steam smells like an apothecary's dream. You're handed a small cloth, soaked in the mixture, and told to press it to your face. You do. It smells ancient, calming, like something your DNA recognizes from 1,000 years ago. Across the room, a man is scrubbing his feet with river sand. Another is carefully shaving with a sharpened bone. Hygiene was no joke in the bathhouse. People took pride in their scrubbing rituals. Even peasants who lived with dirt under their fingernails and slept in straw would make time for a proper weekly bath. And if you didn't go to the banya, people noticed. Bathhouse absences were suspicious. A dirty villager might be hiding illness, or worse, witchcraft. After all, what kind of person doesn't want to sweat out the demons? You sip a second shot of horseradish vodka, mistake, eat another pickle, less of a mistake, and lean back against a warm wooden wall. You're tired, more than tired. Your muscles have turned to pudding. Your brain is fuzzy, but your skin is clean. Your blood feels like it's buzzing. And despite everything, the nudity, the cold plunge, the leaf beatings, you feel kinda amazing. A small child runs by holding 2 buckets, each nearly his size. He's laughing. You wonder if he'll dump them over someone's head. He does. It's glorious. Then the singing starts again. Software low, almost a whisper. You don't recognize the tune, but it wraps around you like steam warm, slow, and oddly comforting. For a brief moment, you close your eyes, and you forget what century you're in. The room dims again, not because anyone snuffed out the oil lamps or barred the small windows, but because your eyes are adjusting. You've entered a new stage in this steam-soaked ceremony, the lull. The calm that arrives after your skin has been boiled, frozen, salted, and steeped like a herbal soup. You lean against a warm wooden beam, its surface polished smooth by centuries of backs, hands, and foreheads just like yours. The heat from the Perilka still radiates gently through the wall. Outside, someone coughs. A fire crackles faintly. Inside, time melts. You're no longer a guest. Not quite. You're becoming part of the furniture. Then a new smell enters the mix. It's earthy, musky, smoky, but not fire smoke. Something different. You open your eyes. A man enters carrying a bundle of what looks like fur and pine cones. But no, those aren't pine cones. They're mushrooms. He lays out the bundle with reverence. The room stirs with excitement. Someone claps. A small bottle is uncorked and passed around. You're about to meet the bathhouse's weirdest guest, the mushroom man. No, not a hallucination though. That may still come. He's a wandering herbalist, kind of part-time mystic, part-time apothecary, full-time local legend. In some villages, men like him served unofficial roles as healers, charm makers, and occasional bathhouse entertainers. He speaks in slow, winding proverbs. A clean soul needs a clean skin and a clever fungus. He offers you a slice of pickled mushroom. You hesitate again, but eat it. It's slippery, chewy, and oddly sweet. Tastes like something you should not enjoy, but do. Maybe it's the vodka. Maybe it's brain confusion from 3 temperature extremes in 1 hour. Then he begins rubbing his strange concoction mushrooms, mud, and bear fat onto people's shoulders. Yes, bear fat. You blink. He gestures to you. You nod because, why not? He scoops up a fingerful of the pasty goo and slathers it across your back. It's warm, strangely heavy, and smells like a cross between a campfire and a butcher's shop. And now, you glisten. Bear fat, you learn, was considered medicinal. It sealed in warmth, protected against windburn, and was even thought to fight inflammation. Especially if you'd just been beaten with tree branches and dunked in a frozen lake. Historians still argue whether these animal fat treatments were widespread practice or fringe superstition, but in some regions families passed down secret recipes: birch sap for the skin, crushed garlic for the lungs, and yes, mushrooms for mystical cleansing. You shuffle over to a low bench, trying not to slip in your own oily footprint. Across from you, a man is soaking his feet in a small bucket of milk. Goat milk, you think. He waves when he sees you staring. Another guest is singing softly again. You catch the same phrase repeated several times. Clean water, clean soul. Dirty thoughts burn in coals. You're starting to wonder if everyone here is a little bit poet. An elderly woman lights a small bundle of herbs and begins swinging it slowly, letting the smoke curl upward toward the beams. She's performing a smudging ritual, common in both pagan Slavic tradition and early Orthodox Christian cleansing rites. The smell is rich and spicy juniper, mugwort, maybe a bit of mint. She whispers something under her breath in rhythm with her movements. It's not for you, it's for the room, for the walls, for the spirit that lives inside the bathhouse itself. Because yes, there is still the bannock to consider. Even after the sweat, the nudity, the steam, the mushroom paste, there's one occupant here more important than all the rest. The spirit of the banya. He's invisible, but never absent. He watches, judges, listens. Legend says the bannock can take many forms: a hunched, hairy man with glowing eyes, a small child with the voice of a thunderstorm, a cloud of steam that whispers your name just when you're drifting off. And if you offend him, you'll know. Some say he scolds you with 2 hot stones. Others say he hides your clothes, trips you with buckets, or whispers secrets to the village priest. One account tells of a man who refused to apologize for cursing in the bathhouse and was found the next morning with soot prints across his chest and no memory of how he got there. Charming. You notice a small pile of bread crusts in the corner. Someone's made an offering. Just a few crumbs, maybe a splash of kvass. A quiet bribe to keep the spirit happy. You consider leaving something too. Maybe a sliver of mushroom, or the last pickle from your bowl. But that seems rude. You settle on a respectful nod to the shadows in the far corner. Someone sees you and nods back. Not at you at the same shadowy corner. You feel slightly less alone. Later, a woman tells you in a hush that the bannock sometimes predicts the future. That if you stay in the bathhouse long enough and close your eyes just before midnight, you might hear your fate whispered into your ear, or see it flash across the coals in the firebox. Of course, she says, you have to survive that long. She winks. You're sweating again. Not from the heat this time, but the weight of old stories pressing in like the walls themselves are breathing. The bathhouse is more than a place to clean yourself. It's a living room, a birthing room, a courtroom, a ghost story. It's where the village women plotted, cried, and laughed together. Where men showed their scars and told tales of wolves. Where children learned that the world was terrifying and wonderful, and that steam was sacred. And you? You're just the latest temporary guest. The mushroom paste begins to dry on your back, forming a tight, crusty film. You smell like a smoked sausage, but you feel oddly safe. The woman who gave you the milk-soaked cloth earlier now invites you to the bench nearest the wall. It's warm, not hot, just gentle. A cat has wandered in, don't ask from where, and is sleeping beside the stove. Its fur twitches occasionally, like it's dreaming of chasing spirit mice. Someone hums again, the same tune. You realize it's a lullaby, and without realizing, your eyes begin to close. The wall behind you creaks softly as someone leans against it. A voice whispers something in an old dialect, maybe a blessing or maybe a warning. You don't ask. Instead, you lean into the warmth, the scent of herbs and the muffled drip, drip, drip of melting snow from the roof. Your breath slows, and for a fleeting moment, you understand the appeal. This isn't just a bath, it's a place between places, between cold and warmth, between body and spirit, between this world and whatever might be watching from the shadows. You're not sure how long you've been, dozing minutes, maybe hours, but you're gently roused by the sound of water splashing into buckets and wooden ladles tapping against copper basins. The room has quieted, like the bathhouse is taking a long breath after the whirlwind of noise, nudity and mushrooms. Someone nudges your foot with theirs. Not rudely, more like an unspoken invitation. You open your eyes. Your vision is a little hazy, but the warmth from the walls and the smell of damp wood keep you grounded. A man squats nearby, pouring water over a fresh batch of stones in the stove. The hiss is sharp and immediate. Steam billows once more, rising like a living thing and swirling in lazy spirals toward the ceiling. You're being called again back to the Perilka. It's time for round 2. You hesitate for a second, but the others are already filing in, towels slung over their shoulders like war cloaks. There's an unspoken rule in the bathhouse: once you start the cycle, you finish it. So you rise, bones creaking like an old gate, and follow them in. This time the heat feels different. It's not the shock of before, it's deeper now, heavier, like your body has stopped resisting and has simply chosen to become soup. You lie back against the slanted bench, and someone passes you a small towel to place on your head. It's wet, it helps. Then comes another Venic session. Different leaves, this time oak instead of birch. Oak smells stronger, muskier. It holds heat longer. The man doing the honors this time has the shoulders of a bear and the silence of a monk. He doesn't speak, just swishes the soaked Venic through the air, creating gusts of burning humidity that wrap around you like hot velvet. Then the hits begin. But this guy isn't here to play. These aren't light taps. These are thuds, heavy, deliberate, punishing strokes meant to drive out the cold and awaken the blood. Every slap leaves a tingling imprint. You grit your teeth, trying to keep from yelping. The others seem to enjoy it. One man even giggles. You remind yourself that this is medicine. Strange, leaf-based medieval medicine. And historically speaking, he's not wrong. In 17th century Russia, the Venic wasn't just a quirky custom, it was a serious therapeutic tool. Oak leaves were prized for their astringent oils, which helped tighten the skin and reduce inflammation. Birch leaves were gentler, often used for children or the elderly. And then there were nettle Venics. Yes, nettle, as in the stinging kind. Some bathhouse enthusiasts, particularly the older, tougher crowd, preferred being lashed with scalded nettles. Good for the nerves, they claimed, clears out the bad spirits. Historians still argue whether this was genuine folk medicine or just the world's worst idea of fun. You, luckily, are spared that particular experience, this time. As the air thickens with vapor and your paws scream for mercy, you glance around at your companions. They are glowing, literally, red, shiny, glistening like lacquered apples. No one seems to be in a hurry to leave. That's because we're reaching the ritual plateau, a moment of collective stillness, when everyone in the Perilka hits the same mental frequency. Conversation slows, breathing sinks. Even the occasional moans of "Oi" are spaced out like a choral arrangement. It's oddly beautiful. You realize you haven't thought about the outside world in a while. No clocks, no shoes, no food that isn't pickled, just steam, silence, and sweat. And then someone breaks the spell. Tea? It's not a question, it's a proclamation. You're herded out of the Perilka once again, this time not toward the icy pond, but to a small annex, attached to the bathhouse. Inside is a low wooden table, benches, and of course a samovar. Ah yes, the bathhouse tea session. The samovar hisses gently, its tall chimney puffing like a tiny factory. Someone places loose black tea leaves into a small pot resting on top, then pours the concentrate into cups, diluting it with hot water. You're handed a mug. It's hot enough to peel paint, but the taste? Smoky, sharp, earthy. Exactly what you didn't know you needed. A bowl of dried fruit makes its rounds, apples, plums, maybe something suspiciously raisin-like. You nibble. A plate of rye crackers appears, you munch. And of course someone sneaks in another shot of vodka. For circulation, they say. You believe them. You have no other choice. Conversation flows again, this time softer. People talk about their gardens, their animals, a cousin who lost 3 fingers to a pig, and someone else's scandalous new boots. This was the social heart of the bathhouse. In a time when life was hard, short, and mostly muddy, the banya was an equalizer. Here peasants and nobles alike stripped down, sweated together and talked like equals. Gossip, deals, and even matchmaking happened over these cups of tea and slabs of goat cheese. One fringe detail: some villages used bathhouses as courtrooms. Yes, if a dispute couldn't be solved publicly, it might be settled privately in the banya, because nothing strips away, lies faster than sweat and scalding humidity. No one can keep a straight face when their toes are being cooked. You take another sip of tea, this one's stronger. Your muscles twitch slightly, like they're still remembering the Venik. Someone offers you a slab of salted fish. You politely decline. Across the table, a man tells you the bathhouse once saved his life. During a particularly bad outbreak of plague, his family locked themselves inside the banya for 3 days, living on tea and pickles, and emerged untouched. Steam kills death, he says, dead serious. It's hard to argue with that kind of conviction. You lean back, letting the wood support your weight, and glance toward the rafters. The bathhouse is quieter now. Even the fire has softened into coals. Outside, a light snowfall has begun, visible through the tiny window near the roof. And there's that moment again. The stillness. That old magic hum that fills the air when you're too tired to resist it. You let yourself breathe. For the first time in hours, maybe in days, you feel clean. Not just outside, but inside too. Your thoughts have stopped racing. Your worries are somewhere else. And your skin? Your skin feels like it's been sandblasted by monks and then massaged with ancient tree oil. Someone burps gently. No one reacts. This is peace, Russian bathhouse style. A woman begins to sing again, same tune, slightly different words. You recognize only one par, short for paritsia, to steam. It's a verb, but also a mantra. Because in here, everything revolves around that one act. You steam to live. You steam to cleanse. You steam to remember that under the layers of dirt, frostbite, and generations of struggle, you're still human. You finish your tea. Someone stretches. Someone else curls up in a blanket and sighs like a cat. The samovar bubbles on. The tea has settled in your belly, warm and earthy. Your limbs feel loose, like they've melted slightly at the joints. And for a few precious moments, you forget how cold the world can be outside this little pine-scented sanctuary. But the bathhouse isn't finished with you yet. A low whistle cuts through the quiet. not sharp or urgent, just enough to gather attention. The mushroom man, or perhaps another self-appointed bathhouse guide, you've lost track of faces in the steam, points toward a side door barely taller than a child. Banie podval, someone mutters. The bathhouse basement. Why does that sound ominous? You hesitate again. Always hesitating, always following. But curiosity pulls you in because, let's face it, the upstairs portion has already boiled, basted and buttered you like a holiday goose. What could be worse? You duck through the door. Instantly the air shifts. It's cooler down here. Not cold, exactly, just damp, heavy. The kind of air that smells like fermented apples and river stones and something else faintly metallic. Maybe blood, maybe iron nails. You can't quite place it. The ceiling is low, the beams thick with soot. You can only stand straight if you're under 5 feet tall, so everyone stoops like penitents in a chapel. The floor is packed earth, darkened by years of sweat and who knows what. Candles flicker from small alcoves in the wall. No windows, no breeze. Just the warmth of bodies and a muffled drip, drip, drip of groundwater somewhere close. You've entered the inner sanctum of the Russian bathhouse. This is where the rituals get heavier, older, stranger. In many villages, the basement of the banya was a liminal space, half spiritual, half practical. It was used for secretive rites, for the sick who couldn't handle the parilka above, and even for childbirth. Yes, childbirth. You try not to dwell on that detail as you pass a low bench covered with what you pray is clean linen. Here's a mainstream fact. In 17th century rural Russia, the banya was often the only warm, sterile and semi-private place a peasant woman could give birth. Midwives swore by the heat for easing labor pains and reducing infection. The steam acted like nature's antiseptic, and the sweat, well, everyone was sweating already, so who'd notice? But childbirth wasn't the only reason people gathered below. You're offered a seat, just a log, really, and a small stone wrapped in cloth is placed in your hands. It's warm, soothing. You hold it without asking. Then the chanting begins. It's soft, rhythmic, and hypnotic. A line of women sway gently, heads covered in shawls. The lyrics are indecipherable to you, an ancient dialect, or maybe just nonsense syllables, passed down through generations like family bread recipes. But the feeling they stir is unmistakable. You are in a healing rite. The chanting builds slowly and someone begins drawing symbols on the ground with water and ash. Another drips oil onto the stone you're still clutching. A whisper passes from ear to ear, dla oczyszczenia, for cleansing. You're not sure what you're being cleansed of, but part of you doesn't want to ask. Historians still argue whether these rites were remnants of pagan tradition or local Christian adaptations. One theory suggests that bathhouse basements were sacred long before the Orthodox Church took hold. Spaces where pre-Christian Slavs connected with the earth, the ancestors, and whatever spirits lived deep in the soil. Others argue that these basements were simply practical cooler in summer, private in winter, and perfect for things that needed secrecy, like divination. You blink. One of the women is holding a mirror, not to look into, to stare through. She places a candle behind it and positions it toward a narrow space in the wall, an opening you hadn't noticed. Through the flickering glass, you see only shadows. Then she mutters a name. It's not yours, but the room stiffens. Apparently someone's asking a question, maybe about marriage, maybe about death. The bathhouse listens. You wonder if you should cover your ears. A moment later the woman shakes her head. No answer. or maybe not the one she wanted. She places the mirror face down on the ground. Ritual complete. And now it's your turn. No, not for divination, for confession. Another man, face serious, gestures for you to sit beside him. He pours hot water into a wooden ladle, holds it close to your face, and says, "Speak." You're not sure what to say. He waits. You say something simple, something about fear, about not belonging, about how odd it feels to sweat with strangers and somehow feel more at peace than you ever have alone. He nods. Steam makes all sins equal. You can't argue with that. In 17th century Russia, confession didn't always happen in churches. Sometimes it happened here, among steam and salt, and the faint possibility of being watched by a spirit who didn't care much for your title or your coins. Because in the banya, everyone was stripped bare physically, socially, spiritually. You were just a body with breath and bones. And so the confession continues, not always in words, but in posture, in the soft grip of someone taking your hand, in the passing of another warm stone from one palm to another. And then, just as you start to drift into that trance again, someone lets out a sneeze, loud enough to rattle the rafters. Everyone jumps. Someone laughs. Another person offers a chunk of ginger root to chew. It's spicy enough to make your eyes water, but it wakes you up. And the trance breaks. One by one, people rise and stretch. The candles are snuffed. The chanting ends. You're motioned toward the stairs again, back to the world of light, tea, and conversation. As you leave the basement, you glance back one last time. You're not sure what you expected. Maybe a shadow moving on its own, maybe the bannock waving goodbye, maybe nothing. But all you see is the flicker of candle wax still melting on stone. You climb the stairs slowly, every step a reminder of how strange, sacred, and profoundly human this place is. The bathhouse is a world of contradictions, healing and hurting, sweating and freezing, laughing and grieving. Upstairs, someone's stoking the fire again. Another Venik is soaking in warm water. A child is crying. A woman is laughing. A man is humming. The same lullaby you've heard all night. Life continues, and you're still part of it. The staircase creaks beneath your feet as you emerge once again into the upper chambers of the bathhouse. It's warmer up here, brighter too. The candles flicker against the logs like fireflies in a pine forest, and the sharp scent of pine tar and smouldering birch bark fills your lungs again, like an old memory. Your muscles hum, pulsing gently with every step. You're beginning to feel like something less than a person, more than a puddle. Perhaps that's the point. No one speaks as you return to the central room. It's not silence born of awkwardness, it's reverence. Like the steam has pressed out the idle chatter and left behind only what's necessary, breath, heartbeat, and the occasional muttered spasibo as a cup is passed or a towel is offered. But before you can sit, before you can curl up in your now favorite corner with your knees tucked under your chin and your mind floating somewhere above your skin, there's a tap on your shoulder. You're going back in. The Perilka again. You glance at the others. They're already moving, already grabbing their towels, already offering knowing smiles that say, "This time it'll be different." And maybe it will be. Maybe you've earned your way to the next level of this medieval purification rite. You follow them. And this time, as the door opens, you're hit with something new. Smoke. The air is still hot, yes, and still wet. But there's an edge now. a pungent cloud drifting near the ceiling that stings your eyes and tickles your throat. Someone tosses a bundle of herbs onto the stove and the smell changes instantly. Now it's sage, mugwort, maybe even a handful of crushed juniper berries. This isn't random. This is the smoke ritual. You sit, heart still thudding softly, and take it in. In 17th century Russia, fumigation was a key part of bathhouse practice. Certain herbs were thought to ward off illness, banish evil spirits, or even improve fertility. Mugwort for headaches, juniper for cleansing. Wormwood was for the bold, or the unlucky. Historians still argue whether these practices were inherited from ancient pagan rites, or were simply the result of trial and error in communities where medicine was part guesswork, part tradition, and part blind hope. The smoke curls around your shoulders, slipping beneath the towel, weaving into your hair, and filling your nostrils until your body feels like it's being seasoned for roasting. Across the room, an older man begins a chant, nothing elaborate, just a rhythmic intoning of syllables that repeat and repeat until they melt into the hissing of the steam. It's hypnotic. You close your eyes and let the rhythm carry you. You imagine the herbs creeping into your skin, your bones, your bloodstream. You imagine every ache evaporating in the heat. You imagine centuries of ancestors doing exactly this, in huts just like this one, with voices just like his echoing off these same sweaty logs. Then crack, a venig slap. You flinch. You open your eyes. One of the bathers grins. It's not your turn this time, but you still feel it. You always feel it. You're nearing the end of the cycle now. Your third, or is it fourth, Perilka session has blurred into a kind of steamy fever dream, and the herbs in the air make it hard to tell where your thoughts stop and someone else's begin. Someone offers you a cucumber. You blink. Yes, a cucumber. Pickled, of course. Crunchy. Cold. The brine stings your tongue in the best possible way, and you suddenly understand why so many old Russian bathhouse paintings include people munching vegetables, half naked beside a stove. The acid cuts through the sweat. It wakes you up. Next comes salt. A bowl is passed around, coarse, grey, not the soft shaker stuff you're used to. This is minerally raw, scraped from the earth with tools that probably had names and personalities of their own. You take a pinch and rub it into your arms, your chest, your legs. It hurts. Tiny scratches burst into fire on your skin. The salt digs in, bites deep. But then comes the sweat again, and it begins to melt. And when it melts, it pulls the heat deeper, like the sting is sucking poison from your blood. This is scrub therapy, 1600 style. It wasn't just for exfoliation. It was believed to rebalance the body's humors, improve circulation, and cleanse the spirits of sluggishness. Or as one grizzled fellow across the room explains, makes you bleed better when winter comes. You sincerely hope he's joking. A scholarly footnote. In some Russian provinces, bathhouses were used to bleed livestock before slaughter because the steam relaxed the muscles. There's a fringe theory that similar logic applied to humans too, that a little voluntary bloodletting triggered by salt and steam was a way to keep the body open and healthy. You do not want to test this theory. And then mercifully, the door creaks open again. You step outside, cold, so much cold. The air stabs your lungs. The world spins. Your skin, still slick with salt and heat, is now bombarded with snowflakes and sharp wind. You don't think, you just move. Toward the trough, the pond, the barrel, anything that isn't on fire. You choose the barrel. The water is black with cold, slick with ice. You dunk. You instantly regret every decision that led you to this moment. Your soul detaches from your body for a full 3 seconds. But when you rise, gasping and wild-eyed like a phoenix with poor circulation, something happens. You feel awake, clean, clear, like the world has been wiped down with vinegar and sage and handed back to you in a cup of tea. You step back into the bathhouse, dripping. Someone hands you a dry towel. It smells like pine and smoke. You wrap it around yourself and collapse near the fire again, your body in revolt, your mind oddly quiet. There's a moment brief but unmistakable where everything aligns. The steam, the silence, the smoke, the salt still burning under your skin, the echoes of laughter from another room, the ghosts of 100 bathers before you humming lullabies under their breath. And in that moment, the bathhouse becomes something else, not just a building, not even a ritual. It becomes a memory engine, because every smell, every ache, every strange herb and salted scratch roots itself deep inside you, threading into places you didn't know were there. And someday, years from now, you'll be walking down a street or sipping tea or scrubbing your arm, and a flash of juniper smoke will hit you, and you'll remember this night. You'll remember the stone floors and the candlelit basement and the cucumber that saved your life. You'll remember the songs, and you'll remember how it felt, for one small piece of time, to be scraped clean of everything unnecessary, down to the skin, down to the soul. You're not sure how long you've been here anymore. The outside world, the village, the century, your own life feels distant, like it's drifted away on the clouds of steam. Time doesn't flow normally in a bathhouse like this. It ebbs and eddies, swirling in pools of heat and memory pooling behind your ribs. The fire crackles. Someone is humming. Again. A lullaby, soft and round. The kind that folds itself around your mind and gently smooths out the creases. You find yourself mouthing along to the tune, though you've never heard it before. Or maybe you have. Maybe it's in your bones, handed down from some long-lost great-grandmother who also once sat in a sweat-slick room, wondering if her eyebrows were about to steam off. You've just survived salt, smoke, slaps. You've dunked yourself in a barrel of freezing water and re-emerged as a slightly traumatized, slightly brined version of yourself. Now what? Now comes the slow phase, the part that most visitors don't understand. You see, the Russian bathhouse isn't just a place to get clean, it's a process, a cycle. And the cycle doesn't end in the heat, it ends in the hush, in the long exhale, in the moments when your body is too tired to fidget and your mind is too warm to worry. You settle into the quiet. There's no talking now, just the occasional creak of someone shifting on a bench, the soft clunk of a teacup, the sleepy sigh of a child curled up in their babushka's lap. You could almost fall asleep. In fact, many people did. In 17th century Russia, it wasn't unusual to nap in the banya, sometimes for hours. The warmth lulled the body into a dreamlike state, and the low light and flickering shadows made it easy to forget you were still technically upright. Families would even bring small bundles of straw or fur to lie on, turning the bathhouse into a temporary inn. You close your eyes just for a moment, and then the door opens again, and with it, a goat walks in. You blink. Yes, a goat. Just calmly stepping into the bathhouse like it's here for its 2:30 steam appointment. A small boy follows it, giggling. Masha needs a bath, he declares. You're not even surprised. See, animals weren't exactly strangers to the banya. Farmers in rural Russia sometimes brought livestock into the bathhouse, either to warm them during brutal winters or to treat skin infections. Chickens, goats, even the occasional pig. It wasn't the most hygienic solution, but when it's 30 degrees Celsius and your goat has frostbite, you don't ask for medical licensing. The goat sniffs at your towel. You sigh. We've all been through it, Masha. The boy leads her to a corner where someone has already laid down a tarp. Someone pours a bit of warm water into a shallow basin. The goat sits. Yes, sits. Like she knows the drill. And then you realize this isn't weird anymore. You've crossed some invisible line where bathing with barnyard animals, drinking herbal sludge, and getting lovingly beaten with sticks has become your new normal. You've become a bathhouse person. There's a soft chime, a spoon tapping against metal. The old man from before appears once more, this time with fermented bread drink, kvass. He pours it into wooden mugs, handing them out like communion. You sip. It's cold, slightly fizzy and tangy in a way that catches you off guard. A little sour, a little sweet, a lot weird, but perfect. Kvass was the Gatorade of medieval Russia. Slightly alcoholic, barely, packed with minerals, and fermented just enough to kill whatever lived in the water. Even children drank it. And in a bathhouse, it was a kind of sacred refreshment. You take another sip and lean back. Your skin feels tight and glowing. Your hair is damp and clings to your head in strange ways. Your fingers are pruny. You are, for lack of a better term, banya cooked. And still, the rituals aren't quite done. A woman approaches, her hand stained with something red, not blood, berries. She holds up a small ceramic bowl and gestures to your arms. You nod. She begins rubbing the berry mash into your skin, cranberries maybe, or rowan. The paste is cold, sticky, and smells like the forest. She hums while she works, and it feels more like painting than bathing. This was a beauty trick passed down through generations, natural berry exfoliants, rich in vitamin C and pigment, used to brighten the skin and tone the body. Not that anyone in this century used the word exfoliate. They just knew if you want to look less like winter death, smear berries on your face. Another bathhouse bather chuckles and says something in Russian you can't quite translate. It ends in, like a Tsar's bride. You choose to believe it's a compliment. Someone tosses more herbs on the stones, and a new smell fills the air, garlic. You groan. Garlic in the banya was believed to ward off illness, chase away spirits, and, in some superstitions, prevent romantic temptation. You're not sure what it's preventing right now, but the smell is so powerful, it practically exfoliates your lungs. Historians still debate whether garlic was used more for health or protection. In some records, it was placed in bathhouse corners to keep the bannock from playing tricks on guests. In others, it was mashed and rubbed into wounds. Yes, even there. You don't want to think about that. The goat sneezes. You sip more kvass. A soft breeze filters through a gap in the logs, and you can almost hear the distant clang of a village bell. Night is creeping in, and with it, the final steam. One more perilka, one more bake. Not out of necessity, but for the symbolism. You follow the others back in, now slower, gentler. No more salt, no more screaming heat, just warmth, comfort. A soft ending to a long day of intensity. You sit, you breathe, you listen to the fire crackle and hiss as it licks the stones. Someone begins telling a story, an old one, about a man who tricked the bannock with a cat's tail and a lump of butter. Everyone laughs not because it makes sense, but because it doesn't have to. It's tradition, it's absurdity, it's human. You realize the bathhouse isn't just about cleanliness or even community. It's a theatre, a stage where roles melt away, where peasants and elders and children and goats all play their parts under the same roof, with the same heat. You've bathed with strangers, sat beside spirits, been scrubbed and slapped and seasoned like stew, and somehow you feel whole. Not clean, exactly. That's too small a word. You feel renewed. You glance around. Every face here seems familiar now. Not because you know them, but because you know this moment. A moment shared by thousands before you. Millions maybe. Across villages and centuries and snowy, goat-filled winters. The door creaks open. You step out for the last time. The cold bites less this time. Or maybe you've stopped noticing. Your skin, newly roasted and berry-stained, crackles with the crisp air like firewood in reverse. The snow is softer now, quieter. Your footsteps don't crunch, they sigh. Even the goat seems less interested in challenging the laws of hygiene and more content to chew a piece of straw and stare deeply into the darkness beyond the doorway. You follow the others across the bathhouse threshold into what feels like another world entirely. But it's not outside, no. This is still inside the Banya compound. You're being led to a smaller chamber just off the main structure. It smells different, more earthy. Mushrooms, clay, maybe even moss. The walls here are different too, lined with dried plants, bundles of herbs tied upside down in thick rows. Sage, lavender, mint, and other things that smell like old books and wet bark. There's no stove in here, no fire, just warmth left over from the parilka and a strange sort of natural insulation that keeps the room humming with quiet energy. This is the herbal lounge, the after room, the sanctuary of the sanctuary, a place to do nothing and let the plants do everything. You're handed a bowl of something steaming, not for drinking, for breathing. You hold it up and inhale. Chamomile, thyme, something minty and sharp, like pine resin. Your sinuses clear so quickly, it feels like your skull has been turned inside out. This is no spa gimmick. In 17th century Russia, herbal inhalation was serious medicine. Not all illnesses could be cured, but they could be outlasted, and steam filled with healing botanicals was one of the only ways people had to combat congestion, fever, or even the lingering ghosts of plague. You sit down on a bed of straw and wool. It crackles and shifts beneath you. A woman beside you has a mask on, not the paper kind, but a thick paste of clay and ash smeared across her cheeks like ceremonial war paint. You're about to ask what it's for, but then she offers some. You nod because, honestly, at this point, why not? It's cold and smells like riverbanks and bonfires. She begins applying it with 2 fingers, humming a tune that sounds more like wind through pine than a song. The ash mixture was used to draw out impurities, though there was also a belief that certain clays could absorb bad spirits. Whether you're ridding yourself of toxins or a poltergeist, your cheeks tingle just the same. Historians still debate the origin of these post-bath rituals. Some trace them to pagan traditions, others to folk medicine passed along by midwives and forest healers. In truth, it's probably both. Russia's medieval culture was a patchwork of beliefs, stitched together by steam and superstition. Someone passes around slices of black rye bread, slathered in butter and sprinkled with salt. It tastes like earth and comfort. You chew slowly. It's the first solid thing you've eaten since the cucumber, and it might be the best thing you've ever put in your mouth. A little girl sits beside you and offers you a dandelion crown she made out of withered stems she must have found somewhere outside. You wear it, naturally. You're already a berry-smeared, ash-painted salt survivor. What's a few weeds on your head? Laughter bubbles in the room. Real, soft laughter. Nothing forced. No one's telling jokes, there's just something inherently funny about being human together in a place where everything unnecessary has been stripped away. Someone begins playing a wooden flute poorly, but the melody doesn't need to be perfect. It's haunting and lovely and slightly off-key in a way that makes your throat tighten. Music, steam, bread, plants, and people, this is the old magic. And yet, there's always one more surprise in the bathhouse. You're ushered, once again, toward a door, but not the main one. This is a small side door, almost hidden. The hinges groan as it swings open, and inside you see nothing but shadows. No fire, no herbs, just cold, hard floorboards and a single bench. This is the Bannock's corner. Every proper Russian banya had a place set aside for the spirit of the bathhouse, the Bannock. Sometimes feared, sometimes respected, but always present. A trickster, a guardian, a judge. People left offerings, soap, bread, even combs, hoping to appease him and avoid the pranks or worse burns, scratches, or terrifying dreams. You don't see anything, of course. No spectral creature crouching in the corner, no glowing eyes or shadowy hands. But you feel it. A presence. Not malevolent, just watching. Someone bows their head slightly as they step inside. You follow their example. A small piece of soap is placed on a rough wooden shelf near the wall. The woman who brought it whispers something under her breath. You can't hear the words, but the tone is unmistakably apologetic. The Bannock's corner wasn't just superstition, it was insurance. Because as much as the bathhouse was about healing, it was also about vulnerability. You strip down your body, but also your soul. And some believe that in those moments of rawness, something someone might notice. Historians still argue whether the Bannock was based on earlier Slavic nature spirits or if it was a symbolic way of reminding people to respect sacred spaces. Either way, you find yourself whispering a small thank you as you leave the room, just in case. Back in the lounge, a boy is spinning a tale of how his uncle once saw the Bannock in the coals and had a fever for 3 days afterward. No one corrects him. No one needs to. The goat sneezes again. You're starting to suspect it's allergic to your aura. Someone begins to gather their things, an old shawl, a satchel of dry bread, a bundle of herbs, and you realize people are leaving, not all at once, but slowly, like mist fading from glass. The bathhouse doesn't close, not really, it just thins out. The crowd loosens, voices lower, time resumes. You stand, your knees a bit wobbly, but your heart oddly steady. You collect your towel, your dignity, and the last half of your bread. The bathhouse has done what it needed to do. And now, like everyone else, you begin to transition back to the world outside. But it's a different world now, or at least it looks different through your bathhouse softened eyes. The snow glows in the moonlight. The trees don't shiver, they breathe. The path to the village seems shorter than before. You step outside. There's frost on your eyelashes, but you're not cold. You're warm in places you didn't know existed. Under your skin, behind your ribs, beneath your tongue. You smell like smoke, mint, goat, and berry paste. You look like something that clawed its way out of a fairy tale swamp, got blessed by an herbal priestess, and emerged victorious. And honestly, you wouldn't have it any other way. Because for all its quirks, its strange rules, its pranks, and its slaps, and its mysterious ghost goats and berry smears the 17th century Russian bathhouse works, not just as hygiene, but as healing, as ritual, as a shared moment of absurd, sacred humanity in a world that's usually too cold, too harsh, too fast. And as you take one last look at the warm light glowing behind the wooden slats, you know one thing for certain. You may not have survived the first Parilka, but you earned the last one. The chill of the evening is starting to settle in around you again, but it no longer bites as sharply. Instead, it's a cool reminder that you've stepped through a threshold, not just of wood and snow, but of time and ritual. You've been baptized in steam, scrubbed by birch branches, smeared in mysterious pastes, and now, as you catch your breath, you realize the experience is far from over. You are led back into the main bathhouse room, the one where the stove still smoulders, faintly humming like a tired beast waking from its slumber. The thick stone hearth radiates a gentle heat, softening the wooden floor beneath your bare feet. Despite the lingering wetness on your skin, the warmth clings to you like a protective cloak spun from smoke and ash. Your fingers instinctively rub your arms and legs, still sticky with berry juice and clay. You look around, spotting your fellow bathers' faces, rosy from heat and cold alike, laughing quietly or lost in their own reveries. A sense of camaraderie hangs in the air, woven from shared discomfort, shared release, and shared survival. Somehow the harsh realities of the 17th century feel a little softer here, less brutal, more bearable. You spot the small pile of fresh linen towels stacked near the doorway. Someone hands you one, coarse but clean, and you wrap yourself in it like a prize. The linen smells faintly of juniper smoke, a scent that to you will forever be tied to this strange, smoky sanctuary. As you begin to dry off, you notice the rough wooden bench along one wall. A few people recline there, sipping from mugs filled with steaming herbal tea. The aroma is rich and calming blends of chamomile, linden flowers, and something sharp and piney that makes your nose tingle. You accept a mug from a kindly older woman who gestures for you to sit beside her. The tea is warm and slightly sweetened with honey, which you suspect is a precious luxury in this time. You sip, slowly letting the warmth seep into your chest. Historically, tea drinking in Russia had not yet become the ritual it would later be. This is the 1600s. After all, but herbal infusions brewed from local plants were already a beloved comfort. The sweeteners might be scarce, but the plants were abundant, gathered from the forests surrounding the villages. You take a deep breath, inhaling the steam from your mug, feeling a rare kind of peace. But peace in the 17th century was often uneasy. Outside, the frozen landscape waits, indifferent to the comforts you find here. Cold, hunger, illness, all lurking just beyond the wooden walls. Which brings us to a curious fact: Russians bathed more frequently than many Europeans at the time. While in parts of Western Europe, bathing was often viewed suspiciously or considered a luxury for the very wealthy, the Russian banya was a cultural cornerstone, practiced by peasants and nobles alike. You can't help but wonder how much that warmth and steam helped people survive the brutal winters and rampant diseases. And yet, historians still argue whether the banya's hygienic benefits were truly effective, or whether it was primarily a social and spiritual institution, cloaked in the language of health. After all, with shared benches, sweating in cramped quarters, and the occasional goat roaming nearby, germs were probably having a field day. But that's the paradox of the bathhouse. It was both a place of cleansing and risk. You can't help but chuckle quietly at that, remembering the earlier encounter with the goat and the questionable cleanliness of some of the benches. A young man nearby is telling a story about a bathhouse mishap involving an over-enthusiastic birch swatter who accidentally knocked his sister into the freezing snow. Laughter erupts around you, and even you can't suppress a grin. You take another sip of your tea, feeling the honey's sweetness chase away the last of the cold shivers. The woman beside you leans in conspiratorially and whispers about a secret bathhouse ritual practiced by the gentry. She claims that some noble families had specially trained attendants who would use Venic bundles not just to stimulate the skin, but to perform intricate massage sequences aimed at improving circulation and relieving ailments like joint pain and muscle stiffness. You raise an eyebrow. Was this the origin of what we now think of as a spa treatment? The line between folk wisdom and aristocratic indulgence seems blurrier than you expected. She smiles mysteriously and adds that some historians suggest these noble attendants might have been early precursors to professional masseurs, though evidence is scarce and often contradictory. You're left wondering how many of these traditions survive the centuries, buried under layers of history, waiting to be rediscovered. Your thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of a man carrying a wooden bucket filled with something that looks like a thick, bubbling mash of oatmeal and herbs. It's called Venic porridge, a curious concoction used to soothe the skin after the intense heat of the steam room. The idea is to spread the cool, soothing paste over the skin, calming inflammation and restoring moisture. You're skeptical but intrigued. When he offers you a small dollop, you accept. The texture is gritty, a bit cold, and smells faintly of pine needles. It's oddly comforting, like a balm from nature itself. You smear some onto your forearm and instantly feel a gentle cooling sensation. The communal nature of the bathhouse means that everyone shares these remedies, no fancy bottles or labels, just nature's pharmacy and a willingness to share. As you continue to explore the room, you notice that some people are wrapping their heads in cloth, perhaps to protect delicate skin or keep their hair from becoming too damp. Others have tied small bunches of herbs to their belts, maybe for good luck, or perhaps to carry a lingering scent with them after they leave. You spot a small corner where several pairs of wooden clogs and simple slippers have been neatly arranged. The mud and snow outside make it clear these are necessary to keep the interior clean, or as clean as it can get in a bustling bathhouse. Historians still argue about how accessible the bathhouse was for different social classes. Some suggest that the poor had limited access, relegated to smaller, less elaborate banyas, while the wealthy could afford private bathhouses within their estates. Others argue that the banya was an inherently communal space, crossing social boundaries more easily than other aspects of society. You find yourself wondering if the truth lies somewhere in the middle. After all, the goat's presence earlier suggested a level of rustic chaos that doesn't exactly scream aristocratic refinement. The evening is winding down, but the atmosphere remains vibrant. You hear snippets of conversation, folk tales, jokes, plans for the next day. The human warmth here seems to radiate beyond the stove's heat, filling the wooden beams and dry straw. You notice an elderly man carefully preparing what looks like a primitive sauna hat made from felted wool. He explains, through gestures and broken phrases, that such hats protect the head from overheating during long sessions in the Parilka. You try it on. It's heavy, warm, and smells faintly of smoke. The paradox of the 17th century banya is clear. It was a place of extremes, scorching heat and biting cold, laughter and superstition, cleansing and contamination. Yet, it survived and thrived for centuries because it met something essential, a human need for connection, care, and ritual. As you prepare to leave this intimate world behind, the older woman beside you offers a final thought. The banya is not just a bath. It is life itself, harsh, beautiful, and shared. You nod, feeling the weight of her words settle warmly over you like the steam from the stove. You step outside once more, the night air crisp, but somehow less threatening than before. Your skin glows faintly in the moonlight, and your breath clouds softly as you exhale. The bathhouse has not just cleansed your body, it has opened a small door into a forgotten world, inviting you to carry a piece of its mystery and warmth into your own time. As you walk away, you realize this is one story you won't soon forget. The night outside the bathhouse feels sharper now, crisp and clear, the kind of cold that bites at your cheeks and sneaks beneath your clothes despite every layer you wear. But you don't rush away. Instead, you pause, taking in the silence that's wrapped around the snow-covered village like a thick woolen blanket. The bathhouse's warmth lingers on your skin, a protective glow against the relentless chill. It's strange how something so simple, hot steam and cold air, can feel like a shield against the hardships waiting just beyond. As you stand there, your thoughts drift back to the unique rhythms of life surrounding these banyas in 17th century Russia. The bathhouse wasn't just a place to wash, it was the heartbeat of the village, a communal space that blended hygiene, health, and social ritual into one steamy package. Imagine the scene: men and women, young and old, stepping out of their heavy furs, leaving behind the worries of the long winter, converging on this wooden sanctuary. Children darting around, squealing as they slip between steam and shadows. The crackle of firewood in the stove, the slap of birch branches against skin, laughter echoing against thick logs. It's chaotic, it's earthy, and it's absolutely alive. You might wonder how the bathhouse culture survived through centuries of upheaval, invasions, and social changes. Part of it is sheer necessity. Surviving the brutal Russian winters required more than just thick clothing and hearty food. It needed a method to stave off disease and maintain physical health. Bathing helped prevent illnesses, relaxed aching muscles, and even soothed mental fatigue. But there's more to it. There's a spiritual dimension woven into the banya tradition. The bathhouse was thought to be a liminal space, a threshold between the physical world and the spiritual realm. People believed that the steam room was where souls could be cleansed and evil spirits kept at bay. It was a place of purification, not just for the body but for the soul. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were primarily folk superstition, or if they played a more significant role in the daily lives of the people. Some claim that the rituals performed in banyas, like burning certain herbs, specific bathing sequences, or the use of blessed water, were deliberate spiritual exercises, while others suggest these were simply practical habits that later took on religious meaning. Either way, the atmosphere of mystery and reverence was palpable. You picture the bathhouse attendants, often elderly women known as banika, who oversaw these spiritual aspects. They were believed to hold secret knowledge, capable of communicating with the spirits that inhabited the banya. Their role was equal parts caretaker, healer, and mystic. You can almost hear their whispered chants, smell the herbs they burn to chase away malevolent forces, and see the cautious way bathers respected these traditions. In fact, the fear of offending the bathhouse spirit, or bannick, was so strong that some villages had elaborate rules. People were warned never to whistle inside the banya, or else risk angering the spirit, and some believed that disrespect could bring illness or bad luck. You might think this sounds like superstition, but in a world where science was limited, such beliefs were powerful forces guiding behavior. Speaking of science, here's a quirky tidbit. Some historians speculate that the sauna-like heat of the banya was actually an early form of disease control. The intense steam and heat might have killed or inhibited certain bacteria and parasites, providing a practical benefit beneath all the rituals. Yet the communal nature of the bathhouse meant that infections could also spread, making it a double-edged sword. The banya's hygiene legacy is complicated and fascinating. As you stand outside, you notice a group of villagers gathered near a fire pit, their faces glowing in the flickering light. They're engaged in a game of gorodki, a traditional Russian folk sport involving knocking down wooden pins with a bat. It's lively and competitive, the kind of simple joy that must have been a vital escape from daily toil. You watch as a young woman throws her bat, missing the pins entirely, prompting good-natured teasing. The laughter feels timeless. You smile to yourself, realizing that no matter the century, people find ways to connect, play, and relax. Walking back toward your temporary shelter, your feet crunching on frozen snow, you recall another fascinating aspect of the bathhouse culture, its role in childbirth and healing. Women often use the banya during labor and postpartum recovery. The steam and heat were believed to ease the pain of childbirth, speed healing, and protect both mother and child from evil spirits. It was customary for women to return to the bathhouse several days after delivery for gentle steam sessions and herbal treatments. This blend of practical care and spiritual protection speaks volumes about the intertwining of health and belief. You imagine the nervous, expectant mother, surrounded by supportive women, entering the warm steam with hope and trepidation, trusting in centuries of tradition. Historians still debate how effective these practices truly were, especially given the high infant mortality rates of the time. But what's undeniable is the strength of community and ritual that supported mothers through their most vulnerable moments. As you reach your shelter, you are reminded of how the banya was a place for all stages of life, birth, healing, socializing, and even death rituals in some regions. It was woven deeply into the fabric of daily existence. You settle down to rest, but the sounds and scents of the bathhouse linger. The scent of birch and pine, the warmth of the stove, the soft murmurs of conversation. It's like a comforting lullaby from the past. Before sleep takes you, your mind drifts to the challenges of modern hygiene compared to this ancient practice. You realize that, despite all our advances, the core human need for cleansing, warmth, and social connection remains unchanged. The Russian banya was more than a bath. It was a place of survival, community, and spirit. You close your eyes, warmed by history and steam. The chill of the early morning creeps in, brushing against your skin, like an unwelcome reminder that the banya's protective cocoon is temporary. Yet, you find yourself reluctant to leave the lingering warmth behind. Outside, the village slowly stirs beneath a pale, icy sky, its inhabitants preparing for another day shaped by hard labor, harsh weather, and long-held traditions. You trace your fingers along the rough wood of your shelter, still scented faintly with pine smoke and birch twigs, the echoes of the bathhouse's embrace. It feels like a lifeline thrown across centuries, connecting you to lives so distant, yet so familiar in their rhythms. Today you decide you'll explore the deeper significance of the banya beyond its physical function. After all, this wasn't just a place to scrub dirt and sweat away. It was a crucible where health, superstition, and social order mingled. Your first stop is the humble village church, its onion dome rising against the grey sky like a beacon. You remember reading that, despite the Orthodox Church's complex relationship with folk practices, the bathhouse often stood at the intersection of religious belief and local custom. Priests sometimes blessed the banyas or conducted rituals to ward off evil spirits. Yet, paradoxically, the church frowned on some bathhouse practices as pagan holdovers. Historians still debate the extent of the church's influence on the banya culture. Some argue that the church's involvement was a form of co-option, sanitizing and controlling popular rituals to align them with official doctrine. Others believe that the church's stance was more ambivalent, reflecting the messy overlap between official religion and local tradition in a society still deeply connected to the land and its mysteries. Stepping inside the church's cool, shadowy interior, you feel the weight of centuries of belief pressing down. Flickering candlelight casts dancing shadows on frescoed walls, and the faint scent of incense mingles with the lingering musk of worn wood. It's a place of quiet contemplation, yet also of communal gathering, much like the banya. Returning outside, you wander toward the village square, where market stalls are beginning to set up. Bright fabrics, freshly baked bread, and smoked fish compete for attention amid the crisp morning air. It's a sensory overload after the hushed solemnity of the church, a reminder of life's ceaseless bustle. You overhear snippets of conversation about upcoming village events and seasonal festivals, many of which feature the bathhouse as a central element. The banya wasn't just for daily hygiene, it played a starring role in rites of passage like weddings, seasonal holidays, and even funerals. One festival in particular catches your attention, the Maslenitsa, or Butter Week, a vibrant celebration marking the end of winter. Bathhouses during Maslenitsa were places of joyful release. People would steam away the grime of winter, share hearty meals, sing songs, and play games. The ritual cleansing symbolized not just physical purification, but the renewal of life itself. You picture the lively scenes, villagers dancing in the snow, cheeks flushed from cold and laughter, birch whisks swinging, and steam curling like smoke from a sacred fire. It's almost cinematic, a vivid tableau of resilience and community. There's a certain charm in the way the bathhouse served as a social equalizer, at least to some degree. Whether noble or peasant, everyone shared in the rites of steam and scrub. Of course, the scale and luxury varied. Nobles enjoyed private banyas with intricate decorations and trained attendants, while peasants made do with simpler communal spaces. Still, the fundamental experience connected people across social divides. You stop by a modest wooden bench outside a small, well-kept bathhouse, where a group of elderly women are chatting over steaming cups of herbal tea. They gesture for you to join and eagerly share stories passed down through generations. One woman recounts a tale about how the banya once saved her village from a terrible illness. When the plague swept through nearby towns, her people retreated to their bathhouse, rituals, steam, herbal washes, and strict communal care. Though some historians dispute the effectiveness of these measures, her conviction is unshakable. You are reminded of the earlier debate about whether banyas were more about superstition or practical health benefits. Perhaps it's not an either-or situation, but a complex blend of both where belief and biology intertwined in a delicate dance. The women share recipes for herbal mixtures, sprigs of rosemary, juniper berries, chamomile and thyme, all boiled into potent infusions for steam or topical use. You take notes eagerly, imagining how these natural remedies offered comfort and healing long before modern medicine. Among the laughter and stories, you notice that the women still employ some fascinating old superstitions. For instance, it's bad luck to leave the bathhouse without washing your feet first, lest evil spirits cling to you. Another warns against speaking ill of the banya spirit, the bannik, who might retaliate with mischief, or worse. You nod knowingly, thinking back to the warnings about whistling inside the banya. It's a strange world where fear and reverence coexist in a warm, steamy embrace. The conversation shifts to the gendered nature of bathhouse use. While some banyas were mixed, many maintained strict divisions. Men and women had separate sessions or different days, maintaining modesty in an era with very different social norms. In some places, children were excluded altogether, while in others the bathhouse was a family affair. You recall a quirky historical tidbit in certain regions. The bathhouse also doubled as a matchmaking venue. Young people would meet, chat, and gauge each other's health and character in the steam-filled rooms. It sounds like an ancient Tinder swiping ritual, just with more sweat and fewer swipes. Historians still argue whether this matchmaking role was widespread or limited to specific communities. Some sources suggest it was common in rural areas, while others think it was more myth than reality. You can't help but smile at the image of bashful teens nervously fanning steam away as they try to impress each other. After the stories wind down, you thank the women and step back outside, feeling the sun's weak but promising glow. You decide to explore the banya's construction and design. After all, these structures weren't just functional. They were masterpieces of vernacular architecture. The classic banya was typically a small, single-room wooden building, often built from freshly felled logs stacked tightly to retain heat. The roof was steep and covered with thick thatch or wooden shingles, designed to shed snow and withstand the elements. A sturdy stone or brick stove sat at the heart, its chimney carefully vented to avoid smoke buildup. You wouldn't survive a day in a 17th century Russian bathhouse inside. Benches lined the walls at various heights, allowing bathers to choose their preferred level of heat, since steam rises and the upper benches were hottest. The floor was often made of wood slats to let water drain away, sometimes covered with straw or rushes for comfort. The door was kept small and heavy to prevent heat loss, and windows were either tiny or absent altogether to maintain the sauna's warmth. You run your hands along a rough, hewn log, feeling the cool smoothness beneath your fingers, marveling at how such simple materials created an environment so effective for bathing and socializing. Some banyas even had a small cold plunge pool or a barrel filled with icy water, your own shock treatment to the heat. The sudden temperature change was said to boost circulation and invigorate the spirit. You recall the shivering plunge you experienced earlier and chuckle nature's own way of waking you up. There's evidence that some bathhouses were elaborately decorated with carvings, paintings, and even Christian icons blending folk art with spiritual protection. You pause before a particularly ornate banya, admiring the intricate woodwork around the door frame, stylized leaves, mythical creatures, and protective symbols. It's a reminder that these structures were more than just functional. They were expressions of identity and belief. Historians still debate whether the designs served primarily decorative purposes or acted as talismans warding off evil. Some argue that carving and painting were deeply symbolic, encoding community stories and spiritual safeguards, while others see them as purely aesthetic. As afternoon drifts toward evening, you reflect on the profound connection between the bathhouse and the natural environment. Birch, pine, and oak weren't just building materials or steam whisks. They were sacred elements, gifts from the forest imbued with healing powers. The banya existed in a delicate balance with nature burning wood for warmth while respecting the forest that provided it. Herbs and plants gathered for steam and remedies tied the bathhouse to the seasonal cycles, reminding bathers of their place in the larger world. You remember the curious fact that some bathhouses were built near rivers or springs to facilitate easy water supply and cold plunges. The water itself was thought to have cleansing properties, with specific springs considered holy or medicinal. It's clear the banya was a microcosm of life itself. Fire and water, warmth and cold, earth and spirit. Before you leave the village, you pause at the edge of the forest, watching the sunlight filter through the branches. The rustle of leaves and distant bird calls create a peaceful soundtrack. You think about how, despite centuries of change, the essence of the Russian banya remains an enduring testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the search for comfort in a harsh world. As night falls again, you carry these images with you, the steam rising from wooden buildings, the laughter of bathers, the scent of pine and herbs, and you realize that this ancient ritual still whispers across time. A final thought lingers while the banya might have evolved. It continues to be a sacred place where the body, mind, and soul find renewal in the simple embrace of heat and water. You step back into the fading light, the village now wrapped in the muted hues of twilight. The bathhouse's glow, soft and amber, invites you like a beacon amid the encroaching cold. As you approach, you notice the subtle shift in atmosphere. The banya isn't just a place for hygiene or socializing anymore. It's also a stage for folklore, a canvas for stories and legends that have floated on the steam for centuries. Tonight, you decide to dive into the mysterious, often eerie realm of the banya's supernatural reputation. The Russian bathhouse wasn't just about scrubbing away dirt, it was a place thick with spiritual presence, where the boundaries between the natural and supernatural blurred like the steam swirling around you. You recall the figure of the bannock, the bathhouse spirit, half guardian, half trickster. Descriptions vary wildly, but most agree he's a small, shadowy creature with a wild beard and glowing eyes, sometimes depicted as part human, part animal. He watches over the banya, protecting it, but also punishing those who disrespect his domain. You shiver involuntarily, though the heat is still intense, as you consider the tales passed down through generations. Ignoring the bannock's presence, it was said, could bring illness, bad luck, or even suffocation in the steam. Hence, bathers were always careful, never whistling inside the banya, lest the bannock misunderstand it as a call to storms, always tossing a few drops of water onto the stove as an offering, and speaking respectfully to the spirit. Historians still argue whether the bannock was originally a pagan deity absorbed into folklore or a later invention, meant to keep people safe and well behaved. Some scholars suggest his origins go back to Slavic nature worship, embodying the unpredictable forces of fire and water that governed the bathhouse environment. You imagine the thrill and terror villagers felt entering a place simultaneously sacred and dangerous, a portal to the unknown. To heighten the eerie atmosphere, you remember a quirky fact some accounts mention, that the Bannock would whisper to bathers or hide in the shadows, sometimes even mimicking human voices. Others say he enjoyed playing harmless pranks, like untying belts or moving belongings, reminding bathers that he was always watching. You smile at the thought, imagining a tiny, grumpy creature lurking just out of sight, grumbling about careless bathers. The banya's spiritual dimension extended beyond the Bannock. It was also a place for cleansing the soul and confronting death. In a grim but fascinating custom, some families would bring their dying relatives to the bathhouse for their final moments, believing the steam and heat could ease the transition between life and death. The banya became a threshold, a liminal space where the veil between worlds was thin. It's not hard to see why the bathhouse earned such a powerful symbolic status in Russian culture. Life was hard, death was close, and rituals that offered comfort or control over these uncertainties were deeply valued. You pause to consider how this liminality also made the banya a place of transformation. Young women would come to the bathhouse before their weddings, undergoing cleansing rituals meant to wash away childhood and prepare them for marriage and motherhood. Similarly, newborns might be introduced to the warmth and steam as a way of welcoming them into the community and purifying their spirits. The bathhouse was not merely a physical space but a stage where the human life cycle played out in ritual and symbolism. You decide to explore some of the peculiar practices tied to these rites. One involves the use of veniki, bundles of leafy branches, mostly birch or oak, used for gentle flogging or massaging. This wasn't just for physical stimulation. It was believed to chase away evil spirits and strengthen the body's defenses. You gently wave an imaginary venik, feeling the imagined sting and relief on your skin. The rustle of the leaves, the scent of sap and earth, and the rhythm of the flicks combined into a sensory tapestry that connected bathers to nature and the spirit world. You recall an unusual custom from certain regions where veniki were dipped in herbal infusions before use mint for freshness, wormwood for protection, or chamomile for calm. It's fascinating how these traditions merged practical healing with spiritual intent. Historians still debate whether these botanical treatments were widespread or localized practices. Some suggest that such herbal veniki use originated from medicinal folk knowledge, later incorporated into bathhouse rituals. Meanwhile, the communal aspect of the bathhouse's supernatural folklore is evident in the stories of Bannock-related curses and protections. Villagers often performed specific chants or prayers before entering to ensure safety. They also left small offerings, bread, salt, or vodka on the stove or windowsills to appease spirits. You're reminded of a quirky tale where a villager, after neglecting to leave his offering, found his horse mysteriously lame for days. Whether coincidence or curse, the story underscores the cultural importance of respecting unseen forces. Inside the steamy enclosure, your thoughts wander to the practical challenges that also shaped bathhouse behavior. The intense heat and humidity were not for the faint of heart. You realize that many of the superstitions likely served as social controls or safety measures cloaked in myth. For example, the prohibition against whistling was probably to prevent loud noises that could startle others or disturb the delicate balance of heat and steam. Likewise, the instructions to never leave the banya door open could be about preserving temperature and avoiding accidents. Yet, wrapping these rules in the language of spirits and curses added an emotional weight that encouraged compliance. You chuckle softly, imagining how an annoyed Bannock would have been the ultimate enforcer of bathhouse etiquette, much more effective than a stern sign. Beyond spirits and superstition, the banya was a place of storytelling. The flickering firelight, the rhythmic beating with veniki, and the swirling steam created an intimate, almost hypnotic atmosphere. Elders recounted legends, heroes' exploits, and local gossip, passing knowledge from generation to generation. You imagine yourself as a listener, captivated by tales of ancient warriors or mystical forests, while the heat seeps into your bones. The bathhouse was a living archive of cultural memory, preserved not in books, but in voices and rituals. Historians still debate how much the bathhouse contributed to oral tradition compared to other communal spaces like village halls or religious gatherings. Some argue the banya's unique sensory environment made it specially suited for storytelling, while others see it as just one of many venues. You ponder how these storytelling sessions might have shaped social bonds and community identity, an essential glue in harsh, isolated environments. Your thoughts then shift to the role of the bathhouse in healing and medicine. While modern science might raise an eyebrow at some practices, the banya was an ancient wellness center. Steam was believed to open pores and release toxins. The alternating heat and cold boosted circulation and immunity. Herbal infusions soothed respiratory ailments and skin conditions. And the veniki massages stimulated muscles and nerves. You remember reading about how Russian doctors in the 18th century began studying banyas with scientific interest, noting their benefits but also cautioning about risks like overheating or infections. The blend of folk wisdom and emerging medical knowledge created a dynamic interplay that shaped how banyas evolved. Curiously, you learn that some bathhouses even had special rooms called parnaya, the hottest chambers reserved for the most intense steam experiences. The word parnaya comes from par, meaning steam, emphasizing the centrality of vapor in this ritual. Entering a parnaya was not for the faint-hearted. You recall an amusing historical anecdote about a visiting noble who fainted after just minutes inside, unprepared for the relentless heat. His embarrassment was softened only by the villagers' laughter and a cup of strong herbal tea. Historians still argue whether such extreme steam baths were common or limited to specific regions and social classes. Some suggest that peasants preferred milder experiences, while nobles indulged in extravagant parnyas with attendants and rituals. As twilight deepens into night, you reflect on the banya's role as a refuge from the harsh realities of 17th century Russian life. For peasants burdened by backbreaking labor, unpredictable weather, and social constraints, the bathhouse offered a rare space for respite and renewal. It was a place where time slowed, senses sharpened, and community thrived, where the heat burned away not just dirt, but worries and fatigue. You think about how, despite centuries of change, the banya's essence endures, a testament to human resilience and the timeless pursuit of comfort amid hardship. As you step away from the bathhouse's glowing window, the cold night air wraps around you again. But inside, the warmth and stories linger, inviting you to return. The cold night air greets you with a briskness that nearly steals your breath as you step out from the bathhouse's glowing embrace. But you're far from finished with the banya's tale. Its influence seeps beyond the steam and wooden walls, touching every facet of 17th century Russian life in ways you might not expect. Tonight, you'll explore the complex social rituals, the unspoken codes, and the wild, sometimes downright bizarre customs that turn this steamy space into a microcosm of Russian society itself. As you trudge through the frost-kissed mud on your way back to the village, you can almost hear the chatter of villagers still inside, voices rising and falling with the rhythm of laughter, advice, and the occasional heated argument over who told the best story. The bathhouse wasn't just a place to get clean. It was the village's living room, its gossip column, its town hall, and sometimes its courtroom. Let's start with the unspoken social order within the banya. You probably assume the bathhouse was a place of casual equality, but historians still argue whether strict social hierarchies dissolved inside those steamy walls or simply shifted forms. In some villages, peasants and serfs mingled freely, sharing veniki and stories without pretense. In others, status was rigidly maintained even in the bathhouse. You picture the local noble servant nervously avoiding eye contact with a wealthy merchant as they both sat in the steaming parnaya. The hierarchy played out in subtle ways: seating arrangements, who got the freshest venik branches, or who was allowed to speak first during storytelling sessions. One quirky tidbit: some bathhouses had reserved seats for the village elders or the most respected babushkas, who often wielded more power than any lord when it came to social matters. These matriarchs controlled the flow of gossip and could make or break reputations with a well-timed comment or a whispered warning. The banya was also a place where serious negotiations sometimes took place. Disputes over land, debts, or family matters could be hashed out amid the heat and steam, where harsh winter realities and the pressure cooker atmosphere forced honesty or at least polite concessions. You might say the banya was the original hot seat for village politics. But it wasn't all stern business. You chuckle to think of how the communal nudity and vulnerability could lead to hilarity, teasing, and even some friendly mischief. You recall reading about a prankster who slipped a cold bucket of water on an unsuspecting bather, sending the entire room into a chorus of shrieks and laughter, a timeless human reaction to the unexpected. The banya's communal nature extended to its practical design. Unlike modern bathrooms, these bathhouses often lacked individual privacy, with benches and washing areas arranged to encourage interaction. This closeness reinforced social bonds, but could also be a source of tension. Interestingly, the tradition of banya etiquette evolved to smooth over these social tightropes. For example, it was considered rude to stare or comment on others' bodies, though gentle teasing was accepted within close-knit groups. There were also rules about hygiene and behavior, washing thoroughly before entering, not spitting or blowing your nose openly, and helping maintain the fire. Breaking these rules wasn't just socially frowned upon. Some believed it invited bad luck or the wrath of the banik. You can almost hear the echo of a grandmother's stern warning, behave yourself, or the bathhouse spirits won't forgive you. Speaking of spirits, the banya was a rich ground for folklore. not just about the bannock, but a whole menagerie of supernatural creatures. One such figure is the Ovinnik, a spirit associated with the threshing barn but sometimes believed to haunt bathhouses, especially when the fire was neglected. The Ovinnik was known for playing tricks or even causing fires, a reminder of the ever-present dangers of open flames in wooden buildings. You shake your head at how these spirits served a practical purpose, encouraging vigilance around the fire and proper maintenance of the bathhouse. A strange but fascinating practice involved bringing along small animals, particularly cats, into the bathhouse area. While not inside the steamy rooms themselves, cats were believed to ward off evil spirits and keep rodents at bay. The furballs' reputation as mystical protectors wasn't unique to Russia, but the banya cats had a special status. One curious legend told of a cat who'd jump onto the stove's edge to talk with the bannock, acting as an intermediary between spirit and human. Whether true or not, the tale highlights how deeply intertwined the bathhouse was with everyday life, nature, and superstition. Now, as you pause to catch your breath, your mind wanders to the ritualistic importance of the bathhouse in celebrations and rites of passage. Weddings often involved a trip to the banya, where the bride and groom underwent cleansing rituals believed to purify their bodies and souls before starting married life. These ceremonies blended merriment with solemnity songs, dances, and shared veniki beating punctuated by moments of quiet reflection. You imagine the vivid colors of traditional costumes, the scents of birch and herbs, and the palpable sense of community as families gathered in warmth and laughter. Similarly, the bathhouse played a role in birth and death rituals. New mothers were often brought to the banya for gentle cleansing and rejuvenation, while funerary customs sometimes included washing the body there before burial. This cyclical connection, life entering and leaving the world through the steam and heat, underscored the banya's role as a liminal space. Historians still debate how universal these practices were, or if they varied significantly by region and class. Some argue that wealthier families had private baths or used alternative purification methods, while others emphasize the bathhouse's enduring communal significance. Turning to more everyday matters, the banya was a practical venue for hygiene in an era when water was scarce and cold. Winters made outdoor washing impossible. Large tubs, often filled with water heated on the stove, were shared among bathers who took turns washing and rinsing. This system wasn't the epitome of cleanliness by modern standards, but it was remarkably effective at preventing disease and promoting health. You're reminded of a quirky historical fact. Some bathhouses had elaborate drainage systems to channel used water away, reducing mud and smell, a small luxury that not all rustic villages enjoyed. Historians still argue about the exact cleanliness standards of rural versus urban banyas, but all agree that the bathhouse was central to personal care. You can't resist a chuckle imagining the awkward dance of nudity and modesty among villagers, balancing social norms with the reality of shared space. Bathing suits weren't a thing. A simple linen cloth might be wrapped around the waist, but often people went bare, as the day they were born talk about vulnerability. On the subject of attire, you recall that special felt hats were worn inside the hottest rooms to protect heads from the intense heat. These hats, sometimes adorned with whimsical embroidery, also served as badges of honor or playful status symbols. You can picture a group of bathers comparing their hats like kids showing off sneakers. Moving deeper into the ritual, you consider the significance of temperature itself. The art of the banya lay in alternating heat and cold, steaming in the parnaya, then plunging into an icy pool or rolling in snow. This contrast was believed to stimulate circulation, strengthen the immune system, and invigorate the spirit. You can almost feel the shock of cold snow against your steaming skin, the breath catching as warmth retreats and returns like a roller coaster. One fringe tidbit: you might not expect some villages had a tradition of snowmen, men who would roll in the snow naked after the banya session, sometimes competing to see who could withstand the cold longest. This bizarre ritual wasn't just bravado. It was believed to harden the body against illness and misfortune. Historians still debate whether these extreme practices were health-oriented or simply social spectacles. As you imagine these scenes, the laughter, the shouts, the biting cold, you appreciate how the bathhouse embodied the Russian spirit, hardy, communal, and full of paradoxes. Finally, before the night fully settles, you consider how the banya's traditions survived despite centuries of upheaval, wars, religious reforms, and modernization. The Orthodox Church at times viewed bathhouse rituals with suspicion, especially those with pagan roots, leading to conflicts and attempts to regulate or suppress certain customs. Yet the banya endured, adapting and absorbing influences while maintaining its core role as a communal sanctuary. You think about how the bathhouse remained a place where people could reclaim agency over their bodies and social lives, a rare form of freedom in a hierarchical and often harsh society. With a final glance back at the warm glow of the bathhouse, you feel a deep appreciation for this fascinating, complex institution. Part hygiene, part spiritual refuge, part social crucible, and part theatre of human life. You take a deep breath, savouring the mingling scents of wood smoke, herbs, and earth, and realize that the banya was more than just a bathhouse. It was a living symbol of survival, resilience, and connection. You linger in the frosty air, the last wisps of steam trailing from the bathhouse like a final whispered secret. This place, this humble, smoky, communal sanctuary, has shaped so much more than just clean bodies. Tonight, you walk the line between history and myth, tradition and transformation, tracing how the 17th century Russian bathhouse remained a steadfast pillar in the shifting tides of time. The banya wasn't just an institution, it was a feeling, a pulse, a gathering point where the physical and spiritual intertwined, where the everyday met the eternal. As you trudge back to your modest wooden home, wrapped in a thick wool cloak, your thoughts drift toward the role of the banya in the ever-changing fabric of Russian life. You realize that its importance extended beyond simple hygiene or socializing. It was a crucible for resilience, a healing space, a place for storytelling and memory, and a sanctuary from a harsh and unpredictable world. One mainstream fact that stands out is the bathhouse's evolution during the 17th century, reflecting the era's broader socio-political changes. The rise of towns and increased trade brought innovations and modifications to the traditional banya, sometimes blending Russian practices with influences from neighboring cultures. While the fundamental experience, heat, steam, venic beating remained, new architectural styles and heating methods slowly crept in. But the core essence, that blend of community, ritual, and rejuvenation, persisted. Historians still argue whether these innovations were embraced universally or resisted fiercely in rural strongholds where tradition was a lifeline. A quirky tidbit: some urban banyas began to experiment with show baths, a precursor to modern public spas, where wealthier patrons enjoyed more elaborate rituals and privacy. This foreshadowed future class divides in bathing culture, yet the humble village bathhouse remained the beating heart for most Russians. You pause to consider the enduring legends surrounding the bathhouse spirits. The bannock and his spectral kin morphed over time from feared entities to cherished protectors, woven into folklore that reinforced communal values. These stories taught respect for nature, caution around fire, and reverence for shared spaces. They were also a source of entertainment and cultural identity, passed down through generations by the crackling fire or between steaming breaths. You smile, imagining a grandmother's voice lowering to a whisper as she recounts a cautionary tale about the bannock, or a boisterous youth daring friends to peek into the steam in search of the elusive spirit. The bathhouse was also a key player in Russian health practices. Far from a mere luxury, it was central to folk medicine, blending herbal remedies, steam therapy, and massage. The Venix leaves, whether birch, oak, or eucalyptus, held specific healing properties, and their rhythmic beating was believed to stimulate blood flow and banish ailments. One fringe fact is that some bathers used homemade poultices or infused water with unusual herbs like wormwood or juniper, tapping into centuries-old herbal lore. Whether these concoctions were truly medicinal or placebo remains a lively debate among scholars. And then there's the sensory experience, the sound of crackling firewood, the hiss of water meeting hot stones, the smell of damp wood mingled with fresh leaves and smoky embers, the taste of cooling kvass or honey-sweetened tea afterwards, a reward after the intense ritual. You can almost feel the fatigue melting from your muscles as you recall how the banya's heat penetrates deep, loosening joints and washing away the grime and worries of daily life. You remember the practical side, how the bathhouse's design, simple wooden walls, a central stove, and slatted benches, was a marvel of efficiency, balancing heat retention with ventilation. The craftsmen who built these banyas understood the delicate dance of fire, water, and air that made the experience possible. Historians still debate the origins of certain design elements. Did the Mongol invasions introduce new heating techniques? Were there Scandinavian influences? The evidence is tantalizing but inconclusive, keeping the scholarly fires burning. Socially, the banya's role evolved into a rite of passage in many villages. Young men proving their manhood might endure longer heat sessions or the notorious snow rolls, while young women learned the intricacies of Venic use and herbal infusions from elder women. You smile at the thought of awkward lessons, whispered advice, and the bonding that occurred in these steamy classrooms. The bathhouse was as much a space for education as for cleansing. Another layer of complexity is the role of gender and modesty. Though men and women often bathed separately, the banya blurred many social boundaries, offering a rare space where communal vulnerability was normalized, at least within the rules. Quirky as it sounds, some communities had mixed banyas during certain festivals or family celebrations where strict social codes relaxed. The resulting combination of steam, laughter, and occasional embarrassment must have been a memorable experience, to say the least. You're reminded again that historians still debate the extent and frequency of such gatherings. Some view them as exceptions. Others argue they were more common than assumed. Throughout your journey, you keep coming back to the banya's cyclical nature, the rhythm of heating and cooling, cleansing and storytelling, isolation, and community. It's a pattern mirrored in Russian life itself, caught between harsh winters and brief summers, between hardship and celebration. You consider the bathhouse's influence beyond Russia's borders. Its traditions seeped into neighboring countries and evolved over centuries, eventually inspiring modern spa culture worldwide. Yet the authentic banya experience remains uniquely Russian, a cultural gem preserved in countless homes and villages. You imagine modern Russians still following these age-old rituals, connecting with ancestors through steam and leaf, finding comfort in the same simple pleasures despite the march of time. And so, as the night deepens and your cloak tightens around you, you step away from the glow of the bathhouse, carrying its warmth within. It's a reminder that survival isn't just about enduring the cold or hardships, but about finding connection, renewal, and moments of joy even in the steam and sweat of a 17th century Russian bathhouse. You breathe deeply, tasting the crisp air tinged with wood smoke, and smile quietly to yourself. The bathhouse has been more than just a place to wash. It's a living story, whispered across centuries in the hiss of steam and the slap of birch branches. In this smoky sanctuary, the harshness of the outside world melts away, replaced by warmth, ritual, and a profound sense of belonging. The 17th century Russian banya was a microcosm of life itself, its social complexities, its superstitions, its joys, and its resilience. You might never have imagined that something as simple as a wooden hut and a hot stove could hold so much history, so many secrets. But now, as you close your eyes and let the night embrace you, the steam's echo lingers, a soft reminder that even in the coldest, darkest times, humans find ways to come together, to heal, and to celebrate. So, rest easy knowing you've journeyed through the banya's heat and shadows, survived its steam and stories, and maybe, just maybe, you'll dream of birch branches, crackling fires, and the gentle laughter of a centuries-old tradition that still warms the soul.